The year was 2150, and the sky over Earth no longer looked the same. It shimmered with faint auroras that weren't natural. They were echoes of magnetic storms left by ships too vast to comprehend. The people of Earth had named them the Creaks after the sounds they made to communicate, tall gray invaders whose ships eclipsed continents. They had come not for conquest, at least not at first, but for resources, our uranium. This story started 10 years earlier, when an emissary had landed in Geneva, cloaked in a light-bending field that made its tall, jointless limbs seem to vibrate as they moved. It spoke through creaking vibrations that you could feel more than hear. It had brought portable translators to send its message. Surrender your world and be admitted to the eternal empire. You will serve, or your infestation will be exterminated. They did not see us as equals, not even as thinking beings. To them we were animals with language, primitives who had yet to tear holes in space and crawl between the stars. And Earth refused. The aliens' black vessel rose into the sky that day, slicing the clouds in half, and vanished with a mind-bending ripple of light. For 5 years, nothing happened. People started to believe it was all a fabrication, a scheme invented by world leaders to unite under a single goal. They were, of course, wrong. The Creeks returned in floods of shadow, 20 fleets strong. Their dreadnoughts blotted out the sun. They were ringed in energy so strong that solar radiation would bend around the ships, forming blankets of green and red light. The orbital satellites burned glass from the reflected radiation. The Battle of Earth, as it would later be called, lasted all of 4 hours. Every city struck by their plasma lances turned into oceans of liquid glass. New York, Shanghai, Lagos, Sao Paulo, gone. Governments fell silent. The human species, in all its fragile unity, stood on the edge of annihilation. The United Nations of Earth had prepared for this attack. They had created underground cities and scientific research stations with the sole purpose of learning from the invaders as quickly as possible to mount an offensive. However, not even in our most outlandish nightmares did humans expect this level of destruction. Many of the subterranean cities were lost, as it seems the Creeks targeted the highest density of human life. Thankfully, military and scientific stations were largely unscathed, as humans were not considered dangerous. Mara had been a physicist at the European Gravitational Observatory in Sardinia before it was turned into a subterranean military fortress. While the world scrambled to point weapons at the sky, Mara and her small team stayed underground, manning a machine called GODE, the Gravitational Oscillation Detection Engine. Mara believed the Creeks had used gravitational communication, ripples in space-time itself, faster than light by passing the waves through folds in the fabric of space. For years, scientists had thought such a system impossible. But Mara noticed something no one else did. The faint echoes of the first Creek's arrival 5 years previously on gravitational wave detectors. They weren't just waves. They were language. It took her 18 months after the invasion, during which half the world's population died, to decode the patterns. When she did, humanity's last hope was born from stolen whispers. The aliens weren't silent overlords. They were a bickering empire, stretched across millions of light years. Through their conversations, Mara learned of other subjugated species, of countless worlds stripped bare to the core in search of the rarest element, uranium. The Creeks referred to themselves as the Dathic and believed themselves gods. She realized something else. The Dathic didn't even conceive that a non-warp capable species could understand their messages. It was like a human whispering secrets in front of ants. The second breakthrough came when Mara figured out how to mimic the Dathic's communications. Using an immense fast neutron reactor lined with several meters of lead, her team built a device that could generate micro-tears in space-time just large enough to send gravitational waves. They called it a uranium pulse drive. When they sent the first signal, it was a plea. "This is Earth. We hear you. We are under attack. Help us." For weeks there was silence. Then, faintly, came the reply. Not from the Dathic, but from a world called Halcor Prime, whose oceans were black with silicon life. "You hear us? Then you are doomed. The Dathic will scour you clean. Submit, and they may let some of you live." But Mara persisted, reaching out across the galaxy. In time, her network grew. More than 20 sentient species whispered back, all oppressed, all hopeless. They told stories of rebellion crushed, of fleets vaporized by weapons that bent light itself. The Dathic had stood undefeated for 80,000 Earth years, yet none of those species had uranium. It was late one night, deep in the tunnels of the bunker, that inspiration struck. Mara watched an old nuclear test video, a fireball blooming in slow motion, sunlight condensed into fury, and something clicked. Every Dathic weapon relied on energy pulses, clean, fast, light-based. Their shields deflected high-velocity threats, plasma bolts, lasers, rail slugs, anything that struck quickly. But what about something that moved slowly? A bomb with no light signature until detonation. A nuclear warhead. In the centuries since the 21st, humanity had moved beyond nukes. They were relics, too dirty, too primitive. But now they became salvation. Uranium was rare beyond Earth. The Dathic mined it only to use sparingly for FTL drives, never realizing its potential as a weapon. The idea of blowing up star systems' worth of uranium to produce a relatively small explosion was so wasteful it was inconceivable. Mara proposed a strategy that the military initially dismissed as madness. Repurpose thousands of nuclear warheads, disguise them as uranium deposits to be lifted by Dathic gravity wells, then detonate. They called it Project Sunfall. The Dathic dreadnoughts descended through the ionosphere, vast as floating cities. They moved with eerie calm, confident that nothing could touch them. Then the sky split apart. When the first warhead detonated, the explosion didn't even appear as light. It was buried too deep in the bowels of the dreadnought. 90 million degrees. The shields acting to contain the initial blasts actually protected the Earth from complete destruction. One Dathic dreadnought's hull melted like candle wax, cascading into the atmosphere as molten rivers. Another imploded from within as its internal reactors destabilized. Within 2 hours, 12 fleets containing warheads hidden in ore were destroyed. They had no idea where the attacks were coming from. The technology was too rudimentary to scan for, too basic to be detected. In the confusion, the remaining fleet fled. The humans had done what no other species had managed in millennia. They had wounded gods. Victory should have been enough, but humanity burned with vengeance. Using their captured knowledge of gravitational waves and space-time, Humanity tore open a space-time corridor directly into Dathic-controlled sectors. For the first time in history, Earth went to war among the stars. The uranium pulse drives, primitive but powerful, allowed ships to skip through folded space-time. They were slow by Dathic standards, but deadly in their precision. Entire fleets of human strike cruisers appeared above Dathic worlds without warning, dropping warheads like rain. The Dathric home worlds burned with a fury they had never seen before. The humans were relentless, merciless. One by one, the Dathic homeworlds fell. The Dathic home system, Volthur, became a field of molten planets. Every communication hub, every reproduction world, every dreadnought was found and destroyed. No other civilization encountered by the Dathric had control over space-time. They had not anticipated this form of attack. Humans moved beyond the need to even use ships. They would rip a space-time corridor at the heart of a homeworld and instantly detonate thousands of warheads within. The last known Dathic transmission was intercepted on year 3 of the war. It was translated to mean, "Please, God, help us." When the smoke cleared, humanity stood alone among the ruins of the galaxy's greatest empire. The other enslaved species, once cowed, rose in revolt, armed with the weapons Earth had shared. The Dathic, once thought eternal, were driven to extinction. Trade routes blossomed in their place. Earth became the center of a new alliance, a federation of liberated worlds bound not by fear, but by memory. Uranium became the currency of the cosmos. Its reserves made humanity wealthier than imagination, and its danger ensured no one dared rise against them. Decades later, long after the last Dathic signal went silent, Mara Ellison stood once more in the observatory where it had all begun. Her hair was white now, her hands trembled with age, but God still hummed softly in the vacuum-sealed chamber. She watched the space-time monitors, once filled with war signals, now showing the quiet pulse of stars. She thought of the first time she'd intercepted their language, the alien arrogance that called humanity non-sentient. She thought of the billions who had died, the cities turned to glass. Her assistant approached quietly. "Dr. Ellison, the council's waiting. The negotiations with the Jareen delegation." "Tell them I'll be there," she said without looking up. "I'm just listening." "Listening for what?" Mara smiled faintly. "For anyone who thinks we're harmless again." She turned back to the console. For a moment the monitor flickered as a new gravitational wave was registered, a rhythmic, intelligent pulse larger than any she had detected before, something that would require unfathomable power to generate. Not Dathic, something new. Mara smiled again. "Perhaps it seems humanity was too loud. Perhaps we will meet those who Dathic call God." And this time, we were ready.